How accurate is GTA 5 Part 2? Let's start. You remembered Franklin's move from the hood to Vinewood Hills. First off, let's talk cash. Franklin's house in Vinewood Hills would be like having a pad in the Hollywood Hills. In real life, you're looking at some serious money. A decent house up there would easily set you back $5 to $10 million, and that's being modest. Some go for way more, like John Arrow's place that sold for $15 million back in 2017. Not exactly chump change, even for a successful heister. Now, how about the neighbors? In GTA 5, Franklin moves in pretty smoothly. Maybe a few side eyes from the locals, but nothing major. In reality, these high-end neighborhoods have some serious security. We're talking private patrols, surveillance cameras, and neighbors who definitely notice when someone new moves in. Back in 2018, there was this whole thing where rich LA neighborhoods were hiring actual ex-military security because of high-end burglaries. In the game, Franklin just buys the house, and boom, he's a Vinewood Hills resident. Real life? Not so simple. High-end real estate deals get a lot of scrutiny. Banks, realtors, and the IRS all want to know where that money came from. There's been cases in LA where criminals tried to buy luxury homes with illegal cash and got busted because of the paper trail. That said, criminals do sometimes pull it off. Back in 2019, the feds busted this money laundering scheme where some guys were using dirty money to buy multi-million-dollar homes in LA. They had this whole setup with shell companies and fake businesses to make the money look legit. What about staying under the radar? In GTA, Franklin's living large and nobody bats an eye. But in real LA, living in a fancy house with no visible income is a pretty good way to get attention you don't want. The neighbors in these areas often include lawyers, executives, celebrities, people who might notice if something seems off. As for the risk factor, some criminals do actually try to live the high life in plain sight. There was this case in 2020 where this guy named Richard Yuan Lee was running a crypto scam from his luxury apartment in Hollywood. But here's the thing, the fancier the neighborhood, the more eyes on you. Living somewhere flashy means more attention, and attention is the last thing a smart criminal wants. The smart ones? They usually keep a lower profile. Maybe they'll have a nice place, but not something that screams, "I've got millions in illegal cash." They might use frontmen to own properties or stick to areas that are nice, but not too nice. So, is Franklin's move to Vinewood Hills realistic? Yes and no. Could a successful criminal buy a mansion in the Hollywood Hills? Sure, it's happened. Is it a smart move? Probably not. But hey, that's the magic of GTA, right? Now the car spawning thing. In GTA 5, you'll notice different types of cars spawn in different neighborhoods. Hit up Rockford Hills, and suddenly you're seeing Ubermacht Oracles, BMW lookalikes, and benefactor Schwarzers, Mercedes-Benz clones, all over. Roll through South Los Santos, and it's more de clase viajeros, old-school Camaros, and beat-up vapid Stanier taxis. Believe it or not, this is pretty true to life in LA. Take a cruise through Beverly Hills, and you're gonna see a way higher concentration of luxury cars. We're talking Bentleys, Rolls-Royces, high-end BMWs, and Mercedes. A 2021 study showed that in Beverly Hills zip codes, luxury car ownership was over 30%, compared to less than 5% in some other parts of LA. The beach areas in both the game and real life tend to have their own vibe too. In GTA 5's Vespucci Beach, you'll spot more convertibles, classic cars, and some luxury sports cars. Similarly, in real-life Venice Beach and Santa Monica, you'll see a mix of expensive cars. It is still LA after all. But also more surf wagons, Jeeps, and classic California cruisers. GTA 5 also nails how certain cars cluster in certain neighborhoods. In East Los Santos, based on East LA, you'll see more lowriders and classic muscle cars. This mirrors real East LA's famous car culture, where classic cars and customized lowriders are a big part of the scene. The game even gets the beater car distribution right. In poorer areas of both Los Santos and LA, you're more likely to see older models, cars needing repair, and fewer luxury vehicles. A 2019 study found that in lower-income LA neighborhoods, the average car age was 12.5 years, compared to 7.5 years in wealthier areas. Time of day affects car spawns in GTA 5, and this is surprisingly accurate too. In real-life downtown LA, the parking garages fill up with luxury cars during the workday as executives and lawyers roll in. Let's talk some numbers. In Beverly Hills, about 1 in 11 cars is a luxury vehicle. The game pumps this up to more like 1 in 3 or 4 in Rockford Hills. But hey, that makes for more fun gameplay, right? One thing the game gets right is the car-to-income mismatch you sometimes see. In both Los Santos and LA, you might spot an expensive car in a not-so-fancy neighborhood, or a beater in a wealthy area. LA's car culture is complex. Sometimes people prioritize their ride over their residence. Next, the Life Invader mission. First off, the idea of compromising a tech CEO's demo device? That's not completely out of left field. Tech launches have had their share of mishaps, though, obviously, nothing as explosive as in GTA 5. Remember when Steve Jobs had an iPhone 4 fail during a demo because of too many Wi-Fi networks? Not quite the same as a bomb, but it shows these events aren't foolproof. Now, let's break down the tech side. Believe it or not, exploding phones aren't pure fiction. The Samsung Galaxy Note 7 fiasco in 2016 showed us that phones can indeed go boom, though that was due to battery issues, not intentional bombs. There have been cases of modified phones being used as explosive devices, but they're usually bulkier and more obvious than what we see in the game. Here's where GTA 5 takes some creative liberties. The security at major tech companies is insane. Apple's campus, for instance, has biometric scanners, wireless detection systems, and even special glass to prevent photography. Michael just walking into Life Invader and accessing a prototype? That's pure game logic. In 2018, there was this whole thing with Chinese companies allegedly putting tiny chips in motherboards to spy on American tech firms. While not explosive, it shows that hardware tampering isn't completely far-fetched. The game also touches on the idea of insider threats. Michael gets help from an employee, Ricky, to get inside. This is actually a real concern in tech companies. In 2020, Twitter had a major breach because hackers social engineered employees to get access to internal systems. But in the game, Michael plants the device and boom, literally, it's ready to go. Real explosive devices, even small ones, are more complex and usually bulkier. The idea that Michael could trigger the explosion just by calling the phone is simplified for the game. Real remote detonation systems are more complicated and usually need special equipment. Could something like this happen in real life? Let's look at some numbers. Most tech CEOs have personal security details that cost millions. Zuckerberg's security budget in 2020 was $23 million. Tech companies spend billions on security. Google's parent company, Alphabet, spent over $20 million on security tech in 2020. Product prototypes go through hundreds of hours of testing before public demos. Now, have there been real attempts to target tech CEOs? Yes, but usually not this dramatic. In 2018, a woman shot up YouTube's headquarters, injuring 3 people before taking her own life. But this was a more straightforward attack, not an elaborate assassination plot. Here's a wild fact. In 2019, a security researcher found he could potentially trigger explosions in EV charging stations through a software vulnerability. While not exactly the same as the Life Invader mission, it shows that creative tech-based attacks aren't pure fiction. So, could someone really assassinate a tech CEO by exploding their phone during a live product demo? Probably not. The security, logistics, and technical challenges make it pretty much impossible in real life. Next, the world of Billionaire Influence in LA, and see how Devin Weston's shenanigans in GTA 5 compare to reality. The game shows this larger-than-life character throwing his weight around, getting cops and feds to do his dirty work. While it might seem over the top, there's more truth to it than you might think. In real-life LA, billionaires definitely flex their influence, though usually in more subtle ways than Devin's cartoon villainy. Take Rick Caruso, a billionaire real estate developer who's had his fair share of controversy. During his 2022 mayoral run, there were accusations that his connections with the LAPD he was a former police commissioner, gave him advantages. Not quite sending mercs after people like Devin Weston, but it shows how money and influence intertwine with law enforcement. The game kinda nails how billionaires can sometimes act above the law. Remember when Devin Weston basically steals cars through legal loopholes? In real LA, we've seen similar-ish stuff. Like when billionaire Alki David got caught flying in a swarm of models and 5,000 cannabis plants on his private jet to a Caribbean island. He basically tried to use his money and connections to smooth things over. Didn't work out as well as it usually does for Devin in the game, though. GTA 5's portrayal of the cozy relationship between big money and law enforcement isn't too far off either. LA has seen its share of scandals where wealthy individuals seemingly got preferential treatment. Back in 2019, there was this whole thing with a Beverly Hills police task force that seemed to be focusing on policing lower-income visitors to the wealthy area while going easy on residents. Not exactly Devin Weston level, but it shows money talks. The game also touches on how billionaires can influence media coverage. Devin's always working angles with the press. In real LA, we've got folks like Patrick Soon-Shiong, who straight up bought the LA Times. While he hasn't used it for anything nefarious that we know of, it shows how the super wealthy can control narratives. One thing GTA 5 gets pretty right is the web of connections between business, politics, and law enforcement. In the game, Devin's got his fingers in everything. Real LA billionaires might be less Bond villain about it, but they've got serious pull. Like how Eli Broad shaped LA's art scene and education policy through his billions, or how David Geffen can get beach access laws changed when he doesn't want people near his house. Most LA billionaires aren't out here literally sending hit squads after people who cross them. They're more likely to sick their lawyers on you, or use their connections to make life difficult in less dramatic ways. Like when Peter Thiel, who's got major LA connections, basically bankrupted Gawker because he didn't like their coverage of him. When it comes to using federal authorities, GTA 5 isn't completely off base. While real billionaires probably can't order the FBI around like Devin does, they definitely have ways of getting federal agencies to pay attention to their concerns. There have been cases where wealthy individuals' complaints somehow end up at the top of investigation lists. The tech angle in GTA 5 is interesting too. Devin Weston is this old-school industrial billionaire, but nowadays, LA's got more tech money moving in. These guys might not be as flashy as Devin, but they've got their own ways of wielding influence. Instead of sending corrupt cops, they might use data and algorithms to get what they want. Here's a wild one from real LA. In 2020, a billionaire got caught trying to bribe his kid's way into USC. Not as dramatic as Devin's schemes, but it shows how some wealthy folks think rules don't apply to them. The difference is, in real life, they sometimes get caught. But it's not all doom and gloom. Some LA billionaires actually do good stuff with their influence, like Eli Broad, who, despite controversies, did pour billions into LA's schools and museums. The game doesn't show much of that side. Hard to make philanthropy exciting in a game about crime, I guess. Next, Merryweather. In the game, Merryweather is this over-the-top private army with high-tech weapons, attack choppers, and what seems like unlimited manpower. They're everywhere in Los Santos, guarding everything from office buildings to cargo ships, and even running black ops. While it's definitely amped up for the game, private security in real LA is actually a pretty big deal. Let's talk about some real PMCs that operate in LA. Companies like Academy, formerly known as Blackwater, and Triple Canopy do have offices in the area, though they're way more low-key than Merryweather. These companies mostly provide executive protection, security consulting, and training. You're not going to see them rolling down Rodeo Drive in armored vehicles with miniguns. The game does get some things right, though. Private security is big business in LA, especially in wealthy areas. Companies like Andrews International and Pinkerton, yeah, the same Pinkerton from the Old West, provide security for everything from movie studios to tech companies. In 2020, the private security industry in LA County was worth over $1.5 billion. Not Merryweather level, but Still, serious money. What about the hardware? In GTA 5, Merryweather's got military-grade weapons and vehicles. Real private security companies in LA do sometimes use armored vehicles and advanced tech, but nothing like what we see in the game. The most high-tech stuff you'll usually see is sophisticated surveillance systems, and maybe some armored SUVs for executive protection. The game shows Merryweather involved in all sorts of shady operations. And while real PMCs have had their controversies, it's usually not as dramatic. That said, there have been some eyebrow-raising incidents. In 2014, a private security contractor in LA got caught selling access to law enforcement databases. Not quite Merryweather-level shadiness, but still sketchy. GTA 5 kinda nails the relationship between private security and law enforcement, though. In the game, there's this weird gray area where Merryweather sometimes works with the police and sometimes operates in their own world. In real LA, private security companies often hire ex-cops and maintain close ties with law enforcement, which can create some interesting dynamics. One thing the game doesn't really show is how private security intersects with the entertainment industry in LA. Major studios like Warner Brothers and Universal have their own private security forces. These aren't Merryweather-style paramilitary units, but they're pretty serious operations. During the 2007 to 2008 writers' strike, some studios reportedly spent millions on extra security. What about the personnel? Merryweather recruits seem like ex-military badasses, and that's actually not too far off. Many real PMCs in LA do hire former military and law enforcement. The difference is, most of these guys aren't out there getting into shootouts with bank robbers. They're more likely to be watching for shoplifters at high-end stores or checking IDs at studio gates. The game also touches on private security on the seas. Remember those Merryweather-guarded cargo ships? While not as heavily armed, real ships coming into the port of Los Angeles do sometimes have private security, especially if they're carrying valuable cargo. In 2019, there were over 20 private maritime security companies operating out of LA County. And we are done. What do you think of this video? Comment down and make sure to subscribe to the channel. That would really mean a lot. Thanks. See you soon.